we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure, maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us, and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're gonna unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors. Hey, everybody. Welcome into the show. You know, I was having this conversation the other day with this guy about the podcast, and he was pretty blown away by the fact that I air a new episode every single day. And, of course, my response to his intrigue and astonishment was pretty much, you know, just my generalized view about things is, you know, it was about just simply maintaining a schedule. And to his acknowledgement, it was pretty grueling, which is very true. But, you know, being straightforward about it, doing this podcast is something that I truly enjoy. And, you know, when you find something that you truly enjoy, you find a way to work it into your habits and your routine. So really, I don't see the grind within maintaining the podcast, but I thought about the way that, you know, the podcast journey has been such a part of really my journey and the leaps and bounds of not only progress, but even improvement that it's helped me with. And today, as we gather around the campfire, I think about that exact idea and in that exact spirit, because I have the privilege of sitting back down with a returning guest today to not only catch up, but also talk about a lot of things that I think are really going to help soften some of the preconceived notions that we have about how we go about making progress in life. You know, a lot of the time we look down at the idea of seeking out a neutral party to help us along, because it kind of feels weak at times. You know, it feels like we're bowing our heads and we're just conceding, letting somebody else take the reins. But the truth of the matter is, it couldn't be any further from the truth. When you reach out to somebody for unbiased advice or even to help you along the way, it's not the fact that they're doing the work for you. You know, you're still the one that has to do the work. You've got to put in the heavy lifting. The difference is they help you to find a direction. They help you to find down the things that you're looking, to put down the things that you're looking in the right place, and to pick up the right thing in order to move it. And that's where my conversation with my guest today, Amrit and Mike, who he was on the podcast all the way back, and I think it was episode 271, where we talked about a whole bunch of concepts that we set the stage for today's conversation, which is going to really do a lot, like I mentioned, to soften that idea of reaching out for help. So I give, on the flip side of this word from our sponsor, I give you my conversation with Amrit. All right, today's episode is brought to you by something that I'm very excited to announce, because I don't know if you're aware or not, but through the project, I do offer an online service, which is built around helping you to explore and develop meditation practices that are going to help improve your quality of life. And it comes based off of a first-hand experience. I built this program around what will help me to not only weather the storms of change and growth, but also to build practices and routines that have helped me to sustain it. And I look forward to sharing this practice and these things with you. So if you swing over to projectmindfulloutdoors.co, you can grab one of the very limited number of seats that I have for a one-on-one session. All right, my friend. It has been a while since we've had a chance to catch up, so this is going to be pretty cool. Last time we talked, I was hiding out in a tent, kind of avoiding the world. Nowadays, as you can see, I'm out and about in the wilderness, got a nice meditative fire going, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you. So how have you been in that time span? What's changed for you? Anything?
Oh, super excited to be here again with you and be part of your podcast. For me, it's really like a momentum that's building, right? I'm coming on these podcasts as guests because it's, for me, so important to reach out to the world and to connect with new people who've never heard about me, and to just talk a little bit about what my story was and what helped me. And I hope I can share a little bit of that with your listeners.
I think that's a beautiful message, and a beautiful intention to set for yourself, because that's been exactly what's motivated me. And it's cool because not only through helping other people understand that there's another way you can travel through your journey, you don't have to hide from life. You turn around and you essentially teach yourself those very same lessons, which as a living experience here in this conversation. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that we all can benefit from.
Yeah, totally. I'm super excited to jump into the conversation.
Well, let's talk a little bit and start diving into the idea of just that, utilizing our skills and our experiences to not only coach and mentor, but inspire and help the people that we connect with.
Yeah, it's so important for us as human beings to help others, to inspire others, to do something of the good stuff we learned in our lives and put that out into the world and have a positive impact on just one person at a time. And I think it's something also so deeply misunderstood, because we think, I figured something out, so let me go out into the world and tell everybody else how to do it. That doesn't work. That backfires, right? Because people don't like being told what to do. No one likes being told what to do. I don't like being told what to do. But when I work with my coach, when I get coached myself, because every coach needs a coach, I work through my own stuff, right? And through the right questions and the right guidance, I come to the point where I give myself the answers that has always been there. And the moment I say it myself, it becomes truth, right? Because it's my truth. I'm sharing it in this coaching conversation when I work with my coach. And I realize, oh my God, the actions I've been taking are really leading me away from this rather than towards it. So now I have two options. Either I can accept the fact that what I'm doing every day is leading me away from myself, or I can say, I want to change what I'm doing because that is not getting me where I want to go. And then it gets interesting because then it comes down to being accountable to your own goals and doing the things you need to do in order to get one step closer to your dream and to your dream life and to a life which you can enjoy and embrace. And then again, the circle closes because then you can share that with other people.
You said something in there that I think is so important to take a little bit of time to really dive deeper into. And it's the fact that the reality of the case, most of us are looking for simply the results. We want to look at somebody or hand them, whatever to get the answers to where it is we're going. But the reality of the matter is those questions are within you and only you're able to tease them out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where it becomes so important to have help. Because when you try to do this by yourself without outside help, you keep running in the same circles because your mind and your ego have created a construct and a belief system and a certain way of thinking about something that will always lead you back to the same actions. And those actions are what created your life as it is today. If you're with the life how it is today, you need to not go back and complain and say, oh, poor me, and I'm the victim here, and the world is after me. But you need to say, what do I have to do differently in order to create a different outcome? And that's work.
Not only is that work, but that is like one of those situations that looking in the mirror and having that hard conversation with yourself is so dreadful and difficult to do because you got to take that time to acknowledge the mistakes that you're making. And I know that from the journey that I've taken, when you remove that mask, just sit with the reality of your heart and understand that song that's beating within you. It's so foreign and it's so hard that you're right. When it comes to understanding it, being able to bounce the ideas off of not only, the people around you, you get one context, but when you go to a neutral party and they look, and their mission is to help you uncover these things, you get this new perspective. And that's where, the talk therapies of the world become so powerful, but they can only do so much within the context of the books that they study or the degrees on the wall. And when you step into the course or the forum of coaching or finding whatever alternative avenue is present for you, you get this real unique life experience to base that on.
Yeah, exactly. Because it comes down to taking action and taking action for your dream, for what you truly want. And so it becomes really important to get really, really clear on what you want, right? I mean, we all want to be healthy and rich and in a super healthy and successful relationship and have this amazing life. I think it's the same for all of us as humans. But when it really comes down to it, and I want to start with the example of health, it's like when you say, like, I want to be the healthiest version of myself. And you look at, what do I eat every day? And then you look at the things you eat throughout the day and you say, really, like 50% of that stuff is not healthy. So what am I doing here? On one I have this dream of amazing health. But on the other hand, I'm not willing to sacrifice my Twinkie bar because it gives me so much joy when I'm eating it. So then that's a moment to just become honest with yourself. Maybe your goal is just to get to 50% health. Maybe your goal is to get to 80% health. But then don't walk around telling the world you want to be the perfect healthy person, but have these actions that are directly counterproductive to it. Become honest with yourself and recognize that your actions are in direct relation to your outcomes.
When I think about that and some of the people that I've helped along the past few months, even for, predominantly, I think about how they come to me with just that idea, I want to be the healthiest person in the world. I want to do this. I want to do that. But they're not quite ready to put those things down. So what I do is I kind of like to drift their attention toward those statements instead of them being the action plan of the moment. Look at them more as your long-term goals. But yet hold yourself in a context and a reality where you're honest with yourself enough to understand that those long-term goals, even though they are beneficial and they were where you would like to see yourself, they don't end up becoming a catalyst for who you are. Because I feel like when you get caught up in that frame of mind where all I'm going to do is achieve these goals and every living second is going to be something to help me further that mission, you not only lose yourself, but you lose the freedom to allow those goals to transition, to change, and take shape in a way that, number one, you can meet them, but number two, you still have yourself.
Yeah, super important. And that's why so many people give up on their goals, because they have this huge goal of, I need to be in perfect health, to stay with the same example. And then they recognize, I'm not there yet. I haven't laid the groundwork in order to build this amazing health for myself. And so rather than saying, I'm going to start off with a small goal and I'm going to make this little adjustment, and then I'm incrementally building up on this over the next month and years, so that at some point I'm naturally closer to my goal because I've been adding 1% at a time to it, right? That is much healthier because that's sustainable in the long run. When you want to change your diet and from one day to the next you say, I'm a vegan now and I don't eat sugar anymore and I don't eat gluten and I don't do any of that stuff, and you last 3 days until you cave in, there's no motivation in that. That brings you down. That next time you think about having a healthy life, you say, that's not for me. Maybe I just need to, live off McDonald's and drink my 6-pack of beer every night, because maybe that's me. Versus saying, hey, I want to make one adjustment in my life. I'm going to have one healthy meal a day. And that can either be breakfast, lunch, or dinner, but I'm making this a commitment to myself to adjust one piece at a time. And then you have that success, right? Because then after a week or 2 or 3, you start feeling better because you've been eating this one healthy meal a day. You've been doing nothing else for your health, but making a conscious effort to do this one thing. And then comes the point, and that usually happens after like a month and a half, we're saying, I think I could do this for the rest of my life. I believe this. I know I can do this. And that's the moment when you can add the second thing, where you can say, okay, now I'm going to go and exercise for 20 minutes a day. And I go for a walk, or I do something really light and easy. And again, you're putting another brick into that foundation of your health.
I'm sitting here listening and I'm thinking about the context between, the drastic change between the environments from our conversations. And right before we got together, I was actually making a video talking about meditative fires and how through the act of building a fire from, the kindling, adding one stick at a time to the flame in order to help it grow till finally we get to where we're at now, where we're burning full-on logs, is such a beautiful metaphor for that. And building the ritual around something such as making a fire, it gives you an opportunity to ground yourself and become not only present within the moment, but bring with that presenceness the intent to look into the way that you're going through things, the way that you're letting things naturally evolve. Because even though we talk about this context of we want to improve ourselves or we want to heal ourselves, and we say we understand that it comes one step at a time, to get toward that ultimate goal of bettering whatever a situation is. But so often the major turnaround point comes in the fact that the results aren't getting there quick enough. When I get this fire going every day, I have to, once I get my ember and I get my flame started, I have to actually sit there for a couple of seconds with a couple of sticks, hold it over it, and let the fire catch on to that before I throw it in there. Because if I just throw a bunch of sticks on top of the pile, I'm going to choke that out because I'm sucking the air out of it.
Yeah.
And I think these are like beautiful representations of this idea of utilizing a non-biased outside party to help us uncover these answers, because we get so locked in the moment where we're always seeing that tunnel vision of what we're doing, that other person can then add, hand us that dry tinder to add to the fire to help it grow.
Yeah. And I love this analogy of the fire, because it's a little bit like being in the campsite and looking over and seeing someone else have a beautiful fire and they're putting logs on there. And you're like, oh my God, all I have to do is put logs on it, right? But your fire is not starting because you're starting with the logs. But to recognize the importance of spending the time, allowing the little sticks to catch fire, and feeling that satisfaction and saying like, I did this. I managed to sit here for 5 minutes and get these little sticks to catch some fire, is the foundation for then being able 15, 20 minutes later to put your first log on and have a beautiful fire going, right? So it's really just as simple. And with the fire analogy, I think it's so easy for people to understand, yeah, obviously I wouldn't start with putting logs on, but do you apply that to your own life? Because a lot of us think we have to start with the end in mind, but it's not that.
Yeah.
Starting with the little steps and creating momentum and creating some energy and then adding to it and nourishing it and taking care of it and giving it some air and making sure, the wind doesn't blow it over, and just being there and attending it and giving it attention. That's more important than throwing the big logs on and then being surprised why it's not working.
Yeah. That's a beautiful analogy, a beautiful way to build on that. And as I'm listening, I'm also thinking about the other hang up that we have, which is fear. Now, the inspiration for the way that I do these fires came off of the old Native American idea of keeping fires. And throughout the progression of adapting taking over the land and everything, it instilled fear within them. But they weren't going to let go of the goal, which was to hold on to a spiritual fire in order to grow and feed the soul. So what they did is they adapted. They said, a large fire is very easy to be seen, and that's going to draw attention. Ultimately, we're afraid that attention is going to bring a negative repercussion down on us. So therefore, let's shrink the size of the fire. We can have a more intimate, controllable connection with that fire. And when I think about the adapting aspect of that story, it works with all of us, because these journeys, whether we're doing it in the moments that we're alone and thinking about how to progress or how to connect with ourselves, or we're having conversations with that neutral party, at some point that fear is going to creep up. And before you know it, you're at a crossroads where that fear is kind of bringing you to a standstill.
Yeah.
And when you take the fire analogy and you look further into the reasons that it's kept so small, you see that even though the fear is there, you can still have that dream, you can still have that goal and that purpose, but it allows you the ability to adapt and change the expression, the way that it's created, the way that you go forward.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, because that's my favorite point in my work with my clients. When that fear actually comes up and when they say, I don't know if I can do this, right? In the beginning, it's all like, yeah, I want this and I want that and I totally can do this. Yeah, I believe it. And then when that fear comes up, we come right to those crossroads, right? And that's that moment to say, okay, now it's time to make a decision. Are you going to allow that fear to freeze you and to keep you in indecision where you can't make up your mind? Or you're going to feel that fear and do it anyways and step through it to the other side. It's not about not being afraid. You know, if you ask anyone who does anything, you know, like mountain biking or surfers or whatever, snowboarders, like crazy sports, right? If they are never afraid, they'll tell you, oh yeah, I'm afraid when I try that new trick and I do that new flip and I could totally land on my head and break my neck. I know that. I would be a fool not to be afraid. But I'm using that fear and I'm processing it and I'm feeling through it and I'm allowing the fear, and then I'm doing it anyways. And that's how you conquer fear. Fear is not conquered by being pushed to the side or by being suppressed. It will always explode back out and get you back to this moment of indecision. But when you can allow that fear to come up and you can look it in the face and you take a step towards it, that's when you're breaking through it.
See, to me, fear is like one of the most important characters to the hero story. And we all, in some context, look at ourselves as the focal point of a hero story. You know, we feel like we're the underdogs and everything. We feel like we just can't do it. And then we've got to go through and find a way to complete the mission. In the day-to-day world, you know, a lot of the times that's easy because we turn everything off and we just simply disconnect and drive ourselves to the results. But when we look at the deeper aspects of our lives, the parts that we all can agree on are much more meaningful to us and more fulfilling, that's where that fear and all the other outside things come in, all the emotions that give you an opportunity to be friend. You know, we look at our feelings and our emotions as an enemy, as things that we have to swim up the stream against. But the more that we learn to sit with them, the more that we realize that they're not only telling us something or teaching us an idea or a tool that we can apply later on in the hero journey, but they're building the beautiful environment, the backdrop that story happens with it.
Yeah. Oh, for me, fear is a beautiful thing because it shows me that I am outside of my comfort zone. That's when I feel my fears coming up. But I also know that when I'm outside of my comfort zone, I'm expanding my comfort zone. I'm expanding my sphere of influence, right? Where I can say like, I am now comfortable in this new thing. That's where I grow. That's where my strength is. So when the fear comes up, it's actually a really good sign for me because I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I'm afraid of this. This means this is outside of where I feel comfortable. This means I'm growing. This means if I do this 10 more times, I won't feel this fear anymore. That means I have grown. Now my comfort zone is much bigger. Now I have to step out even further if I want more growth. And I will feel fear again. And so I think in today's society, people are very resistant to feeling afraid, resistant to allowing fear in their life because it's labeled as bad. And that keeps us all very safe in this little tiny comfort zone of ours in our living room with our TV remote, with whatever habits we're having and saying like, yeah, look, I'm very comfortable. But that's not living. That's surviving. And as time passes, that comfort zone gets smaller and smaller and smaller and gets more constrictive and more limiting. And suddenly you never go out of your house again and you can't talk to people and your entire life becomes limited.
I like how you fold that in because that's always been a huge part of my hero journey is that disconnect in that survival mode. And when I think about some of the tools that, has guides or coaches or whatever label or title you may have, the ultimate thing that we're teaching you while we bring you into that level of fear or that zone of being uncomfortable is you can still reach back into that space where you're comfortable to find a daily nugget of mastery. And as you find that mastery each and every day, you're able to bring that with you and feel a little bit safer, a little bit more secure as you start to expand your camp. It becomes really important when you're in that survival mode because you have to prioritize your actions. You have to prioritize what it is that you're doing. When you sit down and you're in the wilderness, you need food, you need shelter, you need fire, right? You got to decide which one you're going to tackle and how to do that logically. You set up a shelter of some sort. Then you start to build a fire. And then you start expanding. You start looking for food. And once you get those things together, then you're able to expand your camp and start to make it more comfortable. And that's the same thing that we're teasing people through along their very own beginning stages of a hero journey, is understanding that you prioritize what it is you're doing. You find that level of mastery, which becomes your shelter. And then as you step out from that and you explore, you find the materials for a fire. You start to craft that fire, reaching back into the shelter when it's time to rest. Then you go to the fire, you warm up, you venture out, explore, you find your food. You bring it back, you put it on the fire to cook it. Then you to return back to your shelter to rest. And it's a process. It's essentially just like any other living circle or cycle within the living world around us. And what I really love to turn people on to when I'm on the trail with them is just that, how nature operates in a balanced circle. And a part of our journey, a part of the narrative within that hero cycle and hero story is aligning our very own circles to build a tower or build a mountain that leads you to achieving those goals that you set out for.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that idea of the circle and to just learn from nature because it's right in front of us, right? This world has been existing for millennia in this way. And we are trying to do something different where we think like, oh, I know a better way. Let me do it better than nature. But it's so silly because ultimately it is all about this expansion and contraction and expanding again and contracting. And ultimately, every time you expand outside into some new area, that's where you grow. That's when you're going to bring back more into your contraction phase and you can integrate it. And then you expand again. And then you bring that back and integrate that. And it's exactly the same as building your camp. right? If you say like, oh, building a shelter is so much work and it's uncomfortable and it's going to hurt my hands and I'm going to walk around and maybe I shouldn't build a shelter. You're going to be in trouble, right? Same if you say like, I already looked over there for food. I didn't find anything. Why would I even bother going anywhere else? I probably won't find anything. And again, you're in trouble. But when you challenge yourself to expand out into new territory, into something you might be afraid of, that's where the pot of gold is on the other side of that.
I picked up the hatchet for a reason as you were talking, because the more I think about where we're going with this conversation and the idea of inspiring people and making it okay for them to, within their own thoughts and ideas, ask for help with these difficult moments, such as building a shelter. Building a shelter is much easier with tools, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so is progressing through your own hero journey. You know, if you pick up the tools and understand that the characters that we interact with and that move in and out of our story through life are represented by a hatchet when you're trying to find material to build a shelter, it makes it just that much more comfortable. It puts that level of mastery within the context of having to interact with people in this world. And I love that example as I'm sharing it and putting it together, because I'll tell you, when it comes to reaching outside of the shelter or the camp with my social anxiety that I've learned how to befriend, looking back on it, that was the hardest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
To accept not only that I could have a relevant conversation with somebody that could benefit us both, but also to justify to myself that anything that I would have to offer to conversation or friendship or even relationship was valid. You know, that I actually had something to contribute. And that comes from taking the time to build the tools in order to discover your own worth and your value.
Yeah. And also to have the right tools. If you want to build a shelter and you have a paintbrush, which is an amazing tool to create beautiful art, that's not going to help you in building your shelter. But to have the right tool and to have that hatchet to assist you, it's going to allow you to get to sleeping warm in your built shelter much quicker. Doesn't mean you can't build a shelter without a hatchet. That's not what we're saying. Yes, you can. It will just take you that much longer. So the reason you use tools, the reason you use a coach in your life is because you want to minimize the time that it takes you to get there. And look at professional athletes, musicians, even politicians, anyone who's anywhere in the public field. They all have coaches because they understand the importance of having someone by their side in order to achieve that pinnacle of success, right? We got the Olympic Games going on right now. You want to be that gold medal winner, you're not going to try to do that without a tool, and that tool is your coach. You want to build that shelter quickly and efficiently? Get yourself a hatchet. Get yourself someone who has built a shelter before and who can say, yeah, no, that's not going to work. Try this. And now suddenly you are sleeping warm and cozy much quicker than the other guy is trying to figure it out by himself over a 10-year period. And so that being said, and I love that you picked up the hatchet, I want to invite the people listening to us here to take a leap of faith and to try something new and to try out how it can be when you use a tool. And so what I want to offer is, if anyone says, I want to know what it's like to work with a coach, I'll spend an hour with you for free, my time for you to just explore the process and see what you can get from using a tool. And if you like it, we can talk about doing more. And if you say, great experience, but it's not for me right now, God bless you, move on. That's perfectly fine too. But I want to serve the world, right? That's how we started this conversation. It's so important for me to impact people's lives. And I know out of the hundreds of people I talk to, all those people who never became my client had an impact from that 1 hour conversation. So I want to offer that to anyone who's listening. Take me up on this. It's an opportunity. It's for free, no strings attached. You won't get a million newsletters from me afterwards. You'll be safe.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's call it at that since the logs are starting to burn down. Go ahead and take a minute to do the self-promotion and all that good stuff as we wrap this up.
You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm sure we can put the links in the show notes. I don't want to bore people with web addresses and all the boring things, but it really comes down to take action today. Allow yourself to experience what life can be like when you have the right tool to hack it. And back to the hatchet, right? We're hacking life. It's the same thing. So use that opportunity. All it takes is taking action. And you can reach out to me on any of those platforms. You can get my email address through Mike, whatever way you want to fight, but take action and take advantage of this, because this is an amazing offer. And I hope that at least one person will do it.
Well, I do too, and it's been great catching up with you. I always enjoy sitting around and having these kind of conversations. So thanks again for reconnecting and taking the time for us. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again down the line.
Most certainly.
All right, this portion of Project Mindfully Outdoors is brought to you by Blackbeard Fire Starters. And there's not much more that I can say that I haven't said already. I love the Blackbeard Fire Starter line of commercial fire starting products. I use them daily, from fire keeping to outdoor adventure and everywhere in between. I put them up to the test in rugged environments and rugged experiences, and they've yet to fail me. So if you utilize the promo code Mindfully, you too can check these out, put them to the test, throw them in your pack, and be prepared the next time you need to start a fire. There's a link in the show notes, but you can also visit blackbeardfire.com. Use the promo code Mindfully. That's it. That's all. That's the end. We've reached the end of yet another edition of Project Mindfully Outdoors, the Campfire session. Listen, we've talked about it for the last hour now, about how there is no shame to ask for a helping hand. You know, I've talked so openly about the benefits that doing just that have had on my life. And I do that to encourage you to do the same. So I want to thank Amir for sitting down with me and coming back to the Campfire sessions. And I want to thank you for tuning in today. And before I let you go, if you could find it within your day to share this podcast with one or two people, that would be amazing for all of us. Because not only would it help us to further our message, but it would introduce somebody to the hero's journey that lays within them. And for you, it gives you the satisfaction knowing that you helped out your fellow man. And if you could swing over to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts for us, that would be great as well. You know, it only takes a few seconds, and I hear it helps us tremendously in growing our mission. So until next time, my friend, get out there in the wilderness. That's where the stillness and the adventure lie. See ya.